I did a poor job of jumping right past the tight ends. Bauer Sharp was obviously the most productive guy there. And also, of course, last season, Jake Roberts was in the mix with 12 catches and 2 touchdowns. So, where does that room stand right now?
Mark, it's kind of the same conversation as the running back room, right? I mean, I think if you could see Oklahoma target someone in the tight end area, because I think what you got, and Bauer Sharp got a lot of grief from Oklahoma fans, I think collectively, but I think in some ways unfair criticism. Last year he was asked to do a lot more than probably he was ready to do in terms of with all the, as we mentioned, all the wide receivers that were being out. He was asked to be almost the number one or number two wide receiver, right? But he from a he performed fairly well, as you have here, 42 catches for over 300 yards. Not as many touchdowns, I think, as Oklahoma would expect, really kind of from a red zone perspective. But yeah, now Oklahoma's looking at a couple. They've brought in a couple of guys, a couple of depth pieces, probably. Mark, if I'm being honest, more than anything, I think right now, transfer coming in, Will Huggins is probably the leader there. He's really big guy, 6'6". The guy that you like at that position, particularly in the red zone situation. But I think all from everything I heard, I've kind of read and heard and been made aware of, is he's a guy that's pretty good at a lot of things, but doesn't really excel at anything great. I think he's the guy that's probably the number one guy right now. Caden Helms is a guy that's was really highly recruited coming out of high school, as more of kind of a Mark Andrews type of tight end, a little bit, maybe not necessarily an inline, as good of an inline blocker, but more of a receiving tight end. Poor kid, he's had injury after injury every year. He seemed to be a little bit more healthy this year, so it'll be interesting to see how he comes out of the fold in terms of. But I think some of the thoughts are maybe he's not quite as explosive as he has been maybe previously because of some of those injuries. But I think one of the wild cards here is Jaron Kanik. He moved over from the linebacker room. He's a tight end. He did that in the winter, in the off season here. So it'll be interesting to see how up to speed he's able to get, where they can use him in certain situations. He's a little bit of an undersized tight end, but I think this one again, Mark, will be interesting to see. Does Oklahoma go after a couple of tight ends, really more of a guy that could be in the Bauer Sharp mold? Or I mean, no, obviously they're probably not going to be able to find anyone that's going to be an SEC leading tight end, right? But someone that's a little bit more serviceable, specifically from a depth perspective, with what they have there.
Jason, we appreciate you stopping by to break down the Oklahoma offense. Of course, Jason has joined us here, the voice of college football, for years and years and years. So you can always check out those old live streams with Jason and myself. Hopefully, Jason, we could have you back to talk the defense and maybe some recruiting as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.